Hello and welcome back to the Life on the Wrist podcast. Hope you all are having a great week or great weekend when you're listening to this. This past week there has been a few things that have happened, but not a ton. So this might be a shorter episode than normal, but I do want to speak through a couple of new watch releases, as well as a theme that's sort of going around, at least with some of the releases that we've seen so far, and then chat through just a current event that I think would be worth you checking out. So, if you don't know, the LVMH Watch Week is going on right now in Miami, and a lot of brands are releasing or sort of kicking off the year with some releases of new watches that they are adding to their lines. Obviously, there are watches that people like, people dislike, but I thought I would start out with a piece that is fairly iconic, at least in watch collectors who enjoy looking back at the past, and that is from Bulgari. So Bulgari is obviously owned by LVMH and had a watch in the 1980s called the Bulgari, and it was essentially a time and date or time only and date watch that had a really interesting bezel that sort of took inspiration from ancient Rome, sort of the coins, the way that the bezel was finished, sort of took inspiration from coins from ancient Rome, and it was placed around the bezel and created a really interesting design that kind of spoke to, I think, the zeitgeist of the 1980s. And these watches were sold in the 1980s and really, like I said, were iconic for that time period. And then I think they were discontinued. I'm not sure exactly when, but they were discontinued, and so they were not being produced at that time. But, of course, as you would have guessed, Bulgari decided to release a new version of the Bulgari, this time in a 38mm case that has a yellow gold case with a black dial, gold applied hour markers, a date at 3 o'clock with gold hands, and of course has that coin crafted, inspired bezel that has Bulgari repeated on the name Bulgari repeated on the top and bottom. The watch has these really interesting straight lugs that give it a very sort of minimalistic look, but really is a sort of an icon when it comes to the idea of design. This, I think, was a really great move from them. It was obviously an iconic watch in its own right for the brand, and I think for watch collecting in the 1980s. As I mentioned, it sort of stands for a lot of the design elements that were put into these pieces then. The watch has an automatic movement, the BVL 191 automatic movement with 42 hours of power reserve. It has 50 meters of water resistance and is going to be sold for around $13,000 US. Overall, I think this was a really great move by Bulgari. I think it brings back, obviously, an iconic piece from their history, sort of maximizes it into a sort of relevant size and design aesthetic for today's sort of customer base, and I think is another indication that Bulgari really knows what they're doing when it comes to their new watch releases on top of the Octos. I also think it is really important, kind of speaking about the Octos, that they did release this, because this now moves them away from any criticism of receiving that they could receive, where people might be saying, "Oh, this Bulgari is only the Octo." This obviously is going to give them an additional dimension to their lineup of watches that can be iconic within the sphere of collectors, and I think that's a very important and a really smart move by the folks at the company. And what can I say? I think this was a really smart move by them, and a nice looking piece. For me, it's really not kind of my aesthetic. I'm not really a fan of the fact that Bulgari is written on the bezel twice. However, if I kind of put my sort of vintage or think about where this watch is really coming from, I think I'd wear it a lot easier than if I just looked at it from like a modern piece that I would want to buy. So a really nice piece nonetheless. So that was one of the watches that released. The next three watches I want to mention are a group that I'm kind of grouping into this theme that I want to discuss. So Tag Heuer released a Tag Heuer Carrera Dato with a green dial. So what you have is a Carrera with a seconds hand. It's a chrono, so it's a 30-minute counter at 3 o'clock and a date at 9 o'clock. It has a green dial though, which is a new green dial. It's pretty iconic, quite bright, kind of a sunburst effect to it. It's spherical though, it's not kind of like the sunburst. It's a spherical sort of finishing to the sunburst nature of the watch. Stainless steel case, very, very nice. Column wheel vertical clutch chronograph. That's super, super nice. It's their automatic caliber TH20-07. So pretty cool. Pretty cool piece. So green dial on this piece. They also released a green dial chronograph tourbillon, which is also quite nice. Having the tourbillon on the watch is equally as nice. I think tourbillons at 6 o'clock have become extremely popular, especially with the sort of rise of the AP Royal Oaks with that there. There's also the Vacheron Overseas, so a fairly nice piece that kind of competes in that sort of range, or competes in that sort of aesthetic of watches. I think there's a lot of differences between those three pieces, but it's worth noting that at least it'll be spoken about in the same vein. Zenith also released and a couple of interesting watches. They released their Chronomaster Sport lineup, and they've decided to release a Chronomaster Sport with a green bezel and a green dial. And then they also released a 18-karat rose gold version of the watch with a meteorite dial and a diamond bezel. So meteorite bezels, diamonds on the dial and the bezel have become quite popular recently. But I want to sort of, so that's one piece of it. Then there's also these Zenith Chronomaster Sports with the green bezel and the green dial. I think they also come on a rubber strap that's green. And then the last piece I want to talk about is Hublot, who, go figure, released a, go figure, I'm saying that because I'm speaking about a theme here. Hublot released a Big Bang Unico that also is green. It's called, this watch is made up of what they call it's spelled SAXEM. I actually have no idea how to pronounce it. I'll pronounce it Saxum, because which is short for sapphire aluminum oxide and rare earth minerals. It's a sapphire. It's it uses that material to sort of create the case of this watch. It's obviously green. It's matched with a green strap and green accents on the dial and the hands. So interestingly, it seems like a lot of brands are sort of, taking a turn to this new color, or this color of green in a lot of the new watches that they're releasing. I'll also mention, Zenith adding those, the diamonds, the baguette diamonds on the dial with the meteorite dial, as well as the diamond bezel, is obviously a trend that has been very, very popular, and so it makes sense that they're sort of doing that. But it's interesting that there's sort of waves that come with each of the brands of releasing certain watches in certain colors. I think it was blue kind of for a long time. I think green has now become quite popular. I think when Rolex released their Oyster Perpetuals, those sort of colors became extremely popular. So I think brands obviously go through cycles of what colors they want to be popular in their lineup of watches. And I have nothing against that. I would stress with these brands that, changing colors on the dial or the bezels of these watches can't be all of it, And I know we're only in the first week or the first month of the year, so there's plenty more that they can release, and I'm sure that they're thinking about this. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else Tag Heuer, Zenith, and Hublot release. It's a nice. Some of these watches look really nice. I actually think the Carrera Tourbillon is actually extremely nice. I'm also a fan of the Zenith with the baguette diamond dial and the meteorite dial. I'm not rose gold might be a little bit too much for me, but I do like it. It feels a little bit more simplistic compared to the Rainbow Daytonas. So easily some favorites were released, and I'll put links in the show notes to all of these watches so you can check out the pictures of them. The last thing I want to mention is just an event that's taking place in New York City. If you are located in the New York City area, I'd recommend that you attend and participate. The HSNY is putting on their February event, which is called The Making of History, behind the scenes at Zenith's Heritage Department. And Laurentia Bodenmann, the head of Heritage at Zenith, and I apologize if I pronounced your name incorrectly, but she's the head of Heritage at Zenith, will present a behind-the-scenes look at the brand's collection behind-the-scenes look at the brand, whose collection spans over 3,000 linear feet of archives and 5,000 timepieces. You'll have an opportunity to learn about Zenith's storied history, how they secured their spot in the world of watchmaking, and how they are shaping the making of watchmaking history at large. I spoke about Zenith, with their new releases, but I do think Zenith has an incredible history that is worth understanding and researching and being able to speak knowledgeably about if you are interested in watches. They definitely produce some incredibly important watches in the history of watchmaking, and even today I think they're doing some really great things. And I think brands who excel in today's society or today's sort of collecting sphere are brands that ensure that they have a huge tie to their heritage, which I think this talk will be all about, but continue to evolve and sort of create the heritage of today. And in 50 years, when I'm old, I want to be able to look back and say, oh, I remember when I was younger, Zenith released this watch, and it was iconic, it was important for the heritage of the brand, it moved the brand forward in the right direction, and really kept them on the cutting edge of whether it's watch design, watchmaking, engineering, case design, case manufacturing. That's what the brands that I think are really important. So I'm excited to see how this talk goes. I'll leave a link in the show notes. If you are not a part of the Horological Society of New York, I really encourage you to join, because if you want to learn about watchmaking and be a part of supporting sort of today's watchmaking, I think it's an incredible society to be a part of. So I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to see the website and also the event that's going to be taking place. I also think it's a great place to meet people who are interested in watches just like you are. So there's tons of pros about joining the Horological Society of New York. If I haven't pitched it up enough, I guess I'm not going to be convincing you, but please, if you are interested in it, check out the show notes if you so desire. I think we'll call that a wraps for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed some of the watches we spoke about. Let me know you can hit us up on our Instagram or on our website if you want to talk about any of the topics that we discussed in this podcast. I'd love to chat about watches, so don't feel shy or anything. Please send us a message, and we'd love to chat about watches. There'll be links in the show notes to lifeonthewrist.com, the Life on the Wrist YouTube channel, and all of our social media accounts. If you want to get some more content from Life on the Wrist, you can head over to all those links in the show notes of this podcast. With that said, guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and I will see you in the next one.